And we at CII make sure that the agri sessions and education are always after lunch. That's a challenge we take and we keep. Let me, at the outset, accord a very warm welcome to Mr. Sanjay Kumar, the Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education, Government of India. My fellow panelists, we have a very distinguished panel, and I can tell you it will be very, very interesting interaction and insights from everyone. I think the theme today, Renaissance in Indian education, something which is engaging not just the policymakers, not just the educators, but equally the parents and the students. And I can tell you, NEP 2020 is a very strong, very powerful document and policy initiative launched by the Ministry of Education. This is going to be the next level of education, educators, and clearly upskilling the youth to make sure we walk towards Viksit Bharat 2047. We become the third largest economy very soon globally. And clearly, if I look at the document, I've gone through it multiple times, and it's very, very reflective and engaging both for schools as well as higher education. Major strides on foundational literacy, early childhood, teacher training, and technology integration. I think this is, if I want to sum this up, it's a transformative shift in education. Going away from the rote learning, more hands-on, more practical, more experiential, and most importantly, more innovative for the youth to go, apply their mind, explore, research, look into, depending on whether I'm talking about school or the university education. The other good thing is on it's multidisciplinary, application-driven learning I just mentioned. And if I look at platforms like Diksha and Swayam from the Ministry of Education and the teacher app from the Bharti Airtel Foundation, more and more digital interventions we are now seeing across next destinations. Some of them are opening campuses, some of them have already been running classrooms, but I think clearly there is a lot of buzz and lot of, if I may say, quality education which will be brought in. While we have hundreds and thousands of schools and colleges and universities, I think one big miss which I see across in the school education, right from primary to K-12, and if I look at the colleges and the university education, right from engineering, humanities, commerce, and all specialized future technologies, we are missing on two things. A, quality teachers and quality faculty. I think that is the one big problem which we are facing. Two, infrastructure. While many universities, talk about tens or hundreds of acres of land, infrastructure is something which we need to spruce up. And given that we are now seeing technology interventions happening, this is something which is a given. So we just can't resist. Technology just can't be stopped. And I go back to when the computers were introduced, there was a lot of resistance. Jobs will go. People will stop working. There'll be no efficiency. We've seen the world moving in the other direction. Similarly, when we talk of AI, IoTs, machine learning, Gen I, these are the things, these are the tools which are in the hands of educators and the students. But this need to be used in a very ethical manner. This need to be used in a way which enhances learning. One of my big, and I'll be very happy if any one of you can pick this point, one of the big worry which I see our next generation, so my kids and whether they're called millennials, because every time there's a new word which gets coined up, they've stopped reading. I mean, that has just gone out of the system. Libraries are no more being celebrated. Everything is a short message and you get your information. So my worry is when we say on the press of a button, your all questions can be answered, your essays can be made, prepared, your presentations can be done. Are we stopping the power of mind, which is ideation? Because the human brain, human mind has always thought of an idea, worked on it diligently, delivered, implemented, and that's how we see a lot of innovation happens, a lot of development happens, a lot of research comes in. Will it be a boon or a bane? That's the question. I will bring it back to the panel. But more importantly, can this be a hybrid mix of both, rather than we are saying this is not good or the other things are better? Capacity building for teachers, I just talked about. On higher education, both engineering and management, last 2 years, the students are not getting jobs, they're not getting placed. So there is something which we need to do urgently. When I look at technical courses and we see 29% students are employable, 71% are not, I think that's a huge challenge and a huge task in front of the educators. On research and development is something where we are way below 1% of GDP. Even the emerging nations, they are in the range of 2.5%, 3%. So there is a problem on both sides. Industry does not want to spend money on research, and whatever they do is not enough. Academia wants to engage with industry only for summer placements and final jobs. They don't come to the industry for a curriculum review. They don't come to the industry for getting funding on research and development. If they get funds, they don't share transparently how that every rupee is being spent, and therefore there's a huge trust deficit. But globally, if you see, the industry puts dollars, millions and billions of dollars on the table, and it is the academia which provides the cutting edge research because they have the right talent and the right people. So how can these two be can sort of be brought together? So in the end, let me conclude by saying industry, academia, and the government, all the three stakeholders need to come together and see how things can be smoothened, how can we look at giving the right quality of education, and how can we continuously look at faculty in the colleges, universities, and teachers in school upgrading their skill sets. Let me now invite Shri Sanjay Kumarji to come and share his thoughts, and more importantly, what's happening at the Ministry of Education. Mr. Kumar.
Thank you. My distinguished colleagues on the dais and ladies and gentlemen, talking to the CII members, I think it's a privilege, and I think it's also an opportunity to reach out to people who are the mood makers for the country. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. You know, I must at the outset say that most of us here we are all creatures of education. We are all here because of the kind of institutions we've gone to and the kind of education we've had. But the larger question is that, is this opportunity being made available to the other people or not? And by and large, this opportunity should be made available to all. Now, why education? I mean, it's a very redundant question as to why education, but I am going to give you a little bit of data which has emerged out of two studies done by MOSPI in the recent past. And it becomes extremely relevant, more so when we are talking about Viksit Bharat of 2047. What is going to take us there? And most of us who read articles, we are aware of the fact that a lot of people are talking about the middle income trap. How do you break out of the middle income trap if not led by education? So let me come back to the two studies of MOSFI. So the first study which they have done is an assessment of skill gaps of the workforce in India in 2023-24 based on the PLFS data. What does it say? It says that India's employment population, that is in the age group of 15 to 59, is 53.34%, almost at par with countries like US, UK, and Germany. India's share of workers in industry is 25%. By and large, that is what the other countries also have. But when we look at agriculture, it is 43.5%, way too high. And service, 31.5%. Again, way too low. And if you compare this with the GDP's sectoral breakup, you will find that in agriculture, people are by and large impoverished, large number of people contributing less to the GDP, and the service, fewer number of people are working there, but as the breakup of GDP, it is much more. So what we need to do, we need to transfer people from agriculture to the service sector. And how are we going to do that? That is the larger question, and it has to be backed by the kind of education system we have. What is the output of these workers? And if you look at the output of these workers, it comes to about $20,000 at PPP, which is 5 times lower than what the better countries are doing, like US and the OECD countries. So our labor productivity is low. And what is the reason? Because the workers below basic level of education is 27.9%. And only 13.4% of the workers have a degree with advanced education. Now let me come back to the second point. The second point again is a study which is done by MOSFI some time back, in which they have analyzed the labor market of India from 2017-18 to 2023-24. Every year we've been adding 2.5 crores of workers. So if you look at over a period of 6 years, we have added 15 crores of workers in the last 6 years. Where have these fellows gone? 6.6 crores have been, they call themselves self-employed. 5.6 crores help us in household enterprise. 2.7 crores regular wage and salary, the kind of job which we are holding and we are sitting in this hall. And 0.6 crores have become casual laborers. But if you again look at their educational level, it's a little worrisome for us. 76.7% in agriculture, 49.2% in trade, hotels and restaurants, and 76.1% in construction are having only primary and middle school degrees of the educational levels. Now, with this low level of educational level and with low productivity, it is a matter of concern for us and our education system, more so the school education, which is where you begin, followed by the higher education, has to step in and do things for us. You know, sometime back I was reading an interview of Bill Gates, and he was speaking to a Harvard professor, Arthur Brooks. And he says that in the next 10 to 15 years, we are going to see transformational change in health and education because of artificial intelligence. AI is likely to replace doctors and teachers. Now, I think if you juxtapose all these things, I think in India, we are absolutely against time. You know, we do not have the luxury of time with us, and we need to do things well, and we need to do things well in the next 10 years of time. We are a comparatively young country. Our median age is 28.6, and US is 37, Chinese are 42, Japan is 48. So we have a window of next 15 to 20 years ahead of us. And this is the window which needs to be leveraged. Now coming back to the education system in India, the National Education Policy came in the year 2020, and as was mentioned by in the beginning, that it is a transformational policy, and it looks at how do we transform the Indian education landscape. I would say this is the DNA of the Indian society. In it is contained all the kind of things which we are going to see for ourselves in the next 30 years. So where are we so as to begin? Now, if you look at the Human Development Index, which is brought out by the UNDP, it mentions two things from the Education Department as an input. One is, what is the expected years of schooling? Now, expected years of schooling means if you're born today, how many years of schooling can you expect to have? And that figure, we have done reasonably well in the last 5 years. That number has gone up to 13.36 years. And then the other figure they look at is a mean year of schooling. Now, what is a mean year of schooling? For everyone who is part of the labor force and his age is 25 and above, how many years of schooling has that person had? And that is 7.33 years. Both of these, they include higher education years also, that is between the age of 18 to 23. What are the comparative figures? This year, Iceland is number 1 in HDI. What are the comparative figures from Iceland? So expected year of schooling, Iceland has 18.9. And for mean years of schooling, Iceland has 13.9. So we have a long way to go. When I look at the Indian education system, I think we've done very well in the last 10 to 15 years of time. The problem of access to a very large extent has been overcome. So when I look at the GR for elementary education, I find that almost 93% of the children, they are in school. 7% who are not there is a matter of concern for us. But where is the larger concern? The larger concern is that out of every 100 children who join in class 1, 75 are giving class 10 exam. And when you go to class 12, it is 56. So in the run-up from class 1 to 12, I am losing about 44 children out of every 100, and this is a matter of concern for us. And the reason being that to some extent we have paid a lot of attention on the elementary education, that is up to class 8, but 9, 10, 11, 12, we need to create capacity for ourselves. You know, if you look at the education system, it is like this. Large number of primary schools at the bottom, but when you look at secondary and higher secondary schools, it goes up like this. Now, if you have 100 children in class 1 and you need 100 children in class 12, you need a cylindrical system. So we need to open up our system, make more secondary and higher secondary schools, so children naturally move from class to class. Where are the concerns? I think there are structural issues in the school education system. What is happening? We are running many types of schools. So once you finish class 5 in a school, you need to go to class 6, and when you go to class 6, the geography of the school changes. You need to go to a different school. Similarly, after 8th, when you go to a class 9, again the geography of the school is changing. And we are actually seeing dropouts from class 5 to 6 and 8 to 9. These are the two places where we are seeing the maximum number of dropouts. For those of you who are in the business of school or you are familiar with schools, you will see that when you go to a school which is up till class 12th, so school begins at class 1 and it goes up till class 12th, we hardly see any dropouts. Anyone who is entering class 1 goes up till class 12th. But structure of the schooling system needs to change, and we in the school education, we are looking at it. You know, when you start speaking in education, sometimes you feel that you don't know where to stop because there are so many things to be done. but let me just give you a brief snapshot of the National Education Policy of the 2020, and we'll come back to you when you have any queries or questions or when we are having these discussions. So the National Education Policy of 20 is basically premised at 5 concepts. It says ensure access, and this access should be with equity. The quality of education is extremely important because going to a school does not mean that you learn. If you are going to a school, the school must make intervention in your life and you should feel that it is adding value to you. Affordability is a very big component of school education and higher education. And the last is accountability. We who are part of the education system, are we accountable to the populace? Are we accountable to the students who are part of our schooling system? So these are the 5 basic pillars of the National Education Policy 2020. What is the way forward? The way forward is that we must ensure that every child is a part of the school system. And the NEP 2020 envisages that by 2030, the GER for secondary education should be 100%. That is, everyone must have at least 15 years of education. That is, if you include 3 years of pre-primary classes. Initial learning has to be in mother tongue. This is what the NEP 2020 says. And here I am talking to you in English. This is one of the issues which we must get behind us and develop a consensus for us. And the thought I'm leaving behind to you is that, are we going to learn English as a medium of instruction, or are we going to learn English as a subject? And I would say the medium of instruction should be that in the mother tongue of the child, or the Indian language, or the regional language, wherever you might be, but we must learn English as a language. And English as a language will bring in certain amount of proficiency because we do feel that it is important. There is a sweet spot between access and learning outcomes. And this also needs to be developed, that yes, access is there, but it should come with learning outcomes. Expand secondary education, as I mentioned earlier. Teachers are the linchpin of any education system, and all of us are aware of the fact that in our lives, our teachers have been instrumental at several points in our lives by nudging us to do the right thing. So NEP says that yes, we must pay a lot of attention on teachers' education. It talks about integrated teachers' education program, a 4 years curriculum for teachers' education, where you go to a multidisciplinary institution. Today we have 17,000 teachers' education institutions in the country, but most of them are standalone institutions. You see it in the middle of a field that there is a 4-room building or something like that. It's a B.Ed college. NEP says no, you have to go to a multidisciplinary institution and you study ITEP from there. That is the teachers' education. We are going to map the competencies of the teachers, and for that we have brought out the national professional standards for teachers, and to give them a little more guidance, we think that we should identify some of the best teachers and ask them to become mentors to the rest of the teachers. Continuous professional development, 50 hours of training for every teacher every year is what the NEP 2020 envisages, and this is extremely important for us. Use of technology for pedagogy and governance. And I must say that technology should not only be used for pedagogy but also for governance. You know, we have 25 crore children in Indian schools, going to 14.8 lakh schools, and they are being taught by 98 lakh teachers. So that is the larger number we are looking at. And if you are actually going to study and review the performance of every child, we need to bring in technology. So we have brought in Vidya Samiksha Kendra, and I think every student who's part of our education system has been given a unique ID, which we call the Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry. That is an APAR ID. We should be able to track each and every child with this ABAR ID. So if you are in class 5, and then when I look at the data of class 6 and I find that that number is not there, then I need to look at as to where the child has gone and reach out to that child and ensure that the child is there. 2 more points I would say before I close. Skilling is a very, very integral component of the national education policy. And it envisages that by the time you finish class 12 and you get out, you should have at least competency in one kind of skill. How do you create a demand for working with hands in India is a perpetual challenge. And I often say that many of us actually have gone to school so as to escape from working with hands. And the skilling says that, start working with hands and bring in some coordination between your brain and the hands. This is going to be a challenge for us, and we need our collective wisdom to be able to do that. And I think the markets are going to make the difference. If by working with hands, you are going to be paid as much amount of money, and respect will come if you are earning well. But if you earn well with working with hands, eventually it will create a demand for skilling. And this has to be done, and I think this August gathering must collectively cogitate on this matter as to how skilling can be made more remunerative in the country. That is a challenge for us. And the last portion I want to say is that our assessment must change, because we've been talking about experiential learning, we've been talking about developing a critical faculty, and I often say that what you learn and how you learn, what is eventually dependent on how you are assessed. So assessment is extremely important. We have 66 school boards in the country. CBSE is one, which is the largest board. Joseph is here, he is the chairman of CISE, the ICSE schools, but then there are so many other boards, each are marking differently. And for us, the challenge is, how do I develop an equivalence of curriculum as well as assessment across all the boards? We are working with them, and we are very hopeful that we'll be able to create an equivalent platform for all of them. Let me end up with 2 just examples. I was watching an interview of Jeffrey Sachs, and Jeffrey Sachs asks 4 questions, and he says that if you get affirmative answer for all these 4, then you are doing well as an economy. He says, is it innovating well? Are young people learning? Are new technologies emerging? And is there a high saving in the society? If you're doing these 4 things, he says that you are doing well as an economy. I am concerned primarily with our young people learning. A year and a half back, I was with the Singapore High Commissioner. And I asked him that, did you ever get to meet Lee Kuan Yew? And he said, yes, when I was a young diplomat, I did manage to meet him. And he says that we were ushered into his room late in the night, and there he was, and I asked him, absolutely overawed, that, sir, what is your mantra for development? And he says that I'm going to give you 3 things. A, no child should be out of school. B, everyone should have a job. And C was that every job should pay adequately well to keep your body and soul together. And I think this is what we need to look at as economy, as in India, which is growing to become a Vikasit Bharat, I think much before 2047. And collectively, I think when we work together with people like you, I'm sure that we are on the right path with the right leadership. We should be able to do well. But then if India is to rise and India is to become developed by 2047, it has to arrive on the crest of the best kind of education which we can provide to our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those insights. You've raised a few questions, if I may say, queries, and this is where all the stakeholders the policymakers, the educators, society, parents all need to come together and make sure that we take this agenda forward of Viksit Bharat 2047. I'm going to now invite the panelists, and I will request to limit their remarks. I know the subject is very large, but if we can spend 3-4 minutes each, then we will have one round of question answers and see how the time progresses in the end. I want to call upon Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, the Secretary, Chief Executive, CISE, to share his views. Please.
Thank you, Rakesh ji. Respected Secretary School Education, Government of India, Sanjay Kumar sir, all my distinguished, eminent fellow panelists, members of the Confederation of Indian Industry, ladies and gentlemen. I take you from Sanjay sir's concluding remark that if we wanted to see India as a progressed nation by 2047, there is no other way except to educate our young people. The new national education policy has brought in a new energy to the Indian education system. There's a lot of positivity brought in by the new national education policy. From the school education point of view, how we are translating the vision of NEP into reality. The school boards, particularly the CBSE and CISE, the boards are working on the curriculum. Primarily, the curriculum is developed by the National Council for Education Research and Training, that's the NCRT. And the school boards across the country adapt and adopt the curriculum developed by the NCRT. And school boards also evolve various processes to transact this curriculum into the classroom, the pedagogical practices that needs to be adopted in the classroom. So for transacting the curriculum, the school boards, the school education system as a whole needs to build the capacity of the teachers. One of the biggest challenge of attaining the vision of NEP is lack of capacity of our teachers. The teachers' capacity building is the biggest challenge. Teachers at the classroom and teachers working as head of the institution. At both levels, huge capacity building is required. The NEP has given us a vision of 50 hours of continuous professional development. But not only that 50 hours CPD will help us to transform the curriculum transaction. We need to transform the higher education as a whole. The B.Ed colleges, the B.Ed courses, the undergraduate program, the postgraduate program. There has to be continuous reforms in the school education and higher education that can bring transformation in the teaching learning that is happening in the schools. So once curriculum transaction and teachers' capacity is built, how you will measure the achievement of learning outcome as well as effectiveness of all these machineries working, that is done through the assessment practices. So assessment or the examination is the driving force for bringing changes to the school education system. Today, none of the school boards in the country is able to bring assessment reform because of the obsession for mark. We are not looking at the capacity and competency and skill set of the students. We are looking at the percentage of mark. The NEP has given us a vision, moving away from rote learning. But are we able to do that? Again, we need to bring close coordination between the industry, close coordination between higher education and school education, and there has to be a sea change should happen in the way we admit our children into the higher educational institution. Till that happens, none of the school boards in the country will be able to bring transformation in the assessment. Because if one board does any major shift in in the assessment area, the children of that board will be affected and they will not be able to find place in the higher educational institution. And that will lead to a lot of social unrest and stigma attached to that board. So teachers' capacity building, assessment reforms, and using assessment for learning and off learning, and bringing systemic reforms like school quality assessment, the key stage assessment at the 358 level, then the holistic progress card, evaluating children at 360 level from early years till grade 12, and sequential identification of learning progress and the learning gaps, and timely intervention at every stage to address the learning gaps, and also to promote gifted children by identifying their uniqueness and talent. If the children have ability or skill set in sports, that needs to be nurtured and promoted from early years. Identification of skill set at early years will help the child to attain proficiency or mastery in the distinct areas when they become adolescents. So multiple interventions, right from curriculum reforms, innovative teaching learning practices, using technology to bring transformation in teaching learning process as well as the assessment, and teachers' capacity building, systemic reforms, all put together will bring transformation to the school education system. Beyond that, a seamless integration of connectivity between school education, higher education, and the job market, that needs to be brought in. Above all, promoting skill education by encouraging every children to accept dignity of labor. No job is inferior than any other job. Everyone should develop that confidence. Then confidence building is required for our children. In fact, education is 90% encouragement and 10% teaching. Once we are able to do that, we will be able to bring that transformation in the society through education, and we will see India as a developed nation by 2047. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel. You've answered the question which I was going to ask you later, so I would suggest, as I call in the panelists, I'll also put the question which can be covered along with. May I now invite Professor Rangan Banerjee, Director, IIT Delhi, and if you can also talk about the curriculum review which just happened at IIT Delhi. I think it's the need of the hour, if you can cover that as a holistic viewpoint.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mittal. So, good afternoon, and it's indeed a pleasure for us to be here on this stage. I see this is the annual business summit, and it is interesting that the topic of discussion is Renaissance of Indian education. Renaissance means a revival, and all of us know that the first university attracting international students from all over the world was actually in India, right? Nalanda. So when we are talking of Renaissance and India first, we are actually talking about our education system making a difference, providing that competitive edge. And this is why I think it is very interesting that CII has chosen this topic. I'd like to ask you, those of you, all of you, most of you are from industry, how many of you collaborate with a higher educational institution? Please raise your hands. Okay, fair number, but I think we should be increasing that number. So let me just try to answer the question that in IIT Delhi, we have historically had many of the features of NEP in terms of the credit structure, in terms of flexibility, but NEP has provided us an opportunity to do even more. So we've been focusing on multidisciplinarity. We've gone through a 2-year process of extensive stakeholder feedback, students, alumni, industry, to look at all our curriculum. And in the curriculum, our features have been to look at flexibility for the students, choice, flexibility and choice. We are looking at ways in which we enable learning by doing. We are ensuring that every student going out of IIT Delhi has a reasonable exposure to AI and sustainability. We are also enabling team building and capstone projects. We've created mechanisms by which a third-year student, maybe in civil engineering or in textile engineering, wants to do a master's in, let's say, AI. We have a machine intelligence, I'm MTech in machine intelligence and data sciences. He or she can choose at the end of the third year to take that option. So we have got a mechanism where you can transgress these boundaries. We've been traditionally science and engineering, but we have a master's in public policy. We've started an MA in culture, society, thought. We've started a bachelor in design because we want to actually provide a wholesome, complete learning for our students. And we want to provide, now the challenge for us is we have to visualize what is the requirement for future graduates. And this is where industry and academia need to see, because the nature of knowledge is changing. We also need to provide that competitive edge. And in many of these strategic areas, we need to sit together, build trust. That's your motto in this. We have to build trust so that we can provide the competitive advantage for Indian industry together. And this is where we build the graduates for the future with the skill sets where they can adapt and they can provide. We create the new knowledge and together build the technology and the competitive advantage. We work with defense to be indigenize technologies. We now have a center which is with DRDO and industry. So it's a tripartite. Industry, government, academia, we need to create new models. The kind of investments that we have from industry in academia and research is not sufficient if we want to take it to the next level. We need to work together, build the trust, and see how we can do this going forward so that the whole objective of NEP is to provide future-ready graduates which will enable our industry and our nation to develop so that we can become Viksit Bharat. I think I will stop here in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Saab. I don't want to be accused of discrimination, so let me ask Professor Ananya to come in because the girls must get the priority all the time. Well, you'll have to wait.
Thank you. Not accusing you of discrimination at all. Very, very happy to be here. Actually, it's very interesting that I will be talking right after Professor Banerjee, because I represent Shivnadar University, which in the private education space also had some of the characteristics of NEP from the time it was started in 2011. And it was established by Mr. Shivnadar, who also established HCL, one of the top IT companies, as you know. And his vision was very much what NEP came to reflect. That is a fully multidisciplinary education, very close connection to industry. I mean, we are kind of twins with industry in some way. And we have we've always had a 4-year degree, with the 4th year dedicated to open-ended learning, to projects, research, and research being built into the DNA of the university right from undergraduate to PhD. So NEP was a soft landing for us. But what I came back in 2022, I have been leading the university since then. What the NEP enabled us, I think, is created a greater acceptability of what was at one time seen as an experiment and was trusted by some parents, some industries, and we're very grateful that some of our alumni are placed globally in some of the top institutions of the world, both industry and universities. But it became a lot more a lot easier for us to do this credit-based learning, the academic bank of credits, and so on. However, there is a very long way to go, particularly in terms of this question of employability of our graduates. And by employability, I don't mean only employability in industry, but our graduates to actually be able to pursue careers of their choice. And in that context, now we are in a situation where we are training graduates for a future we don't know. So we have focused as one of our most important goals is to create leaders who can lead change. So it is not only being able to adapt to what the future will bring, not only being able to adapt to what industry thinks it needs today, but to be citizens who will lead in whatever context they are. And I can speak a lot more about that, but we are seeking many new kinds of industry partnerships, long, short, deeper on particular kinds of skill building, but the goal is the same, that we want to produce leaders.
That challenge happening in the private universities, because most of them are, if I may say, sweet meat shops. I mean, they're just sort of charging fees, giving degrees, children not getting employment. So if you can just cover that in under a minute, please. Thank you.
So yes, so funding in private education, particularly higher education, is a problem because I think Mr. Kumar pointed to all the questions of affordability, the question of accountability. All of those things are difficult to meet when universities are competing in the same landscape with public institutions which are well funded, and also now foreign universities which may come with a different source of funding. So I think the only way the funding question can be addressed properly is through collaboration. So whether it's with industry, whether it's with government, and I would think, we've seen these models in other parts of the world where industry, society, philanthropy, or research funding, all of this have come together with the focus on creating the learning and creating the research that we want to create. So a lot more collaborative platforms of funding are required.
Yeah, the only thing is while the private public universities get more funding, they don't have the flexibility and freedom to decide what they want to do, which you have. So that's, I think to me, that's a better...
Some of them do.
Yeah.
Even have, yes.
Okay. Mohan, let me come to you, and if you can also cover about the industry-academia partnerships, the point I raised. Yeah?
Well, good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see what I can do in the next 5 minutes. And so therefore, we're talking about the renaissance of the education in India post-NEP 2020. The adjective I like to use is rebirth of education system in India. That's what precisely happened. The timing could have been ever better than what it happened so far, because the previous education policy was more than 30 years old, 1986 when it came by. It came at a point of time when technology was not only accelerating, but it's been amplifying. So it's not just technology for technology's sake, but it had to be everywhere. Everywhere it is all pervasive at this point of time. And the third reason why I think the timing is perfect, because if you're talking about Viksit Bharat, we don't have the full-fledged education system for the country, then Viksit Bharat wouldn't have been true at all. Mr. Sanjay Kumar talked at length about the strengths of NEP 2020. I wouldn't definitely not get into the key elements of 2020, but let's look at what are the outcomes that happened because of NEP 2020. And before I get to the outcomes, I think one thing that we have all to recognize, NEP 2020 is a policy initiative. It drew about what we need to be doing. It did not address the systemic issues that we have in this country as how to do it. And this is an extremely complex subject because you have education which runs by the central government as well as the state government, there's public sector, the private sector, there are plethora of stakeholders in this whole system. So controlling them becomes the biggest challenge. So what do we see as, and I should caveat by saying that I do work both with the higher education and the schooling systems for the last 15 years or so,
I spent about 50 years of my life in the corporate world. So let me bring both the examples together to say what I feel is the current situation. The first and the foremost is the big win that we have from NEP 2020. We truly see the multidisciplinary approach in every education institution. That's, I think, a very positive that's come out. And at a point of time when you see products and services are also multidisciplinary. You look at automobile at one point of time. What did it have? It had only mechanical parts. What does it have now? It has electronics, it has software, embedded software, and so on and so forth. So the result is, I think that has been a big win for us at a point of time when things were changing. We are certainly seeing multidisciplinary education system has helped us considerably. The second, as a result, what is happening with the multidisciplinary part of it is that several education institutions have now put together a double major. They've also got minors going along with him. They also have now an integrated MTech program, an integrated PhD program from undergrad all the way up to PhD. So that, I think, is a big win for us, is the first one. The second win I see is also that there's a fairly larger amount of awareness in research. We're seeing that the research people in education institutions have started thinking about industry. Otherwise, they were doing research for research's sake. Most often than not, we have seen that most of the research gets to a level called TRL 3 at the max, TRL 4 occasionally, but never get to a product prototyping stage, which is like TRL 7 or TRL 8 or for that matter, TRL 9. That part is changing at this point of time. Several initiatives that nature, even including Professor Rangan Banerjee is familiar. We have an initiative called Inventive, which is basically innovation at IITs, which has now been in the third version, potentially the fourth version coming up in 2026. We've drawn out all the researchers, we've drawn out people from the industry and made them sit together under one roof and making sure for 2 days interacted with each other to see how best this research can then be monetized for the benefit of this nation. The third one is, I still feel it's a win. I certainly think that there is a fairly large amount of change. Employability of students is growing. We'll come to a different point in a minute from now. And why is this happening is primarily because I think there is more levels of awareness for apprenticeship program, the internship programs, and as what headline I keep calling it as, now we are moved towards student-centric experiential learning. So as a result of that, what we are seeing is more amount of students are moving towards understanding what the industry requirements are. And certainly, I think a part of it is also the gap years that are being given by some of the education institutions. People are trying out startup ideas. We see a fairly momentum with startups too. So I'll stop there by saying there are three positives that I see. Where are the negatives that I have? Where are the challenges that I have? The challenges are all centered around implementation. Implementation or the execution is the key challenge for us, which is actually leading us also into disparities. There is enormous amount of differentiation between the urban and the rural education system today in this country. There are centrally funded institutions versus the local government funded institutions, or for that matter, the private sector funded institutions. There is enormous, want me to finish? Give me under 1 more minute, I'll finish it off. So there are a number of challenges that we have. So therefore, the significant variability is one challenge that I see. The second one is, and the biggest one, I think even Mr. Rakesh Mittal called it out, is about the infrastructure gaps that we have. We still have schools which don't have computer systems. We have schools at this point of time which don't have power on a continual basis. And the third one, which I think is the key to me, is resistance to change. And that is the big time. We did we have 38 schools in our management at this point of time. And these 38 schools, we wanted to put digital learning. Teachers who are retiring 5 years from now refuse to come to this learning classes, saying that we don't want to learn this stuff. So I think that has to be broken. So what do I see as the moving forward strategy? One of the things is that it's a multi-stakeholder engagement that has to happen. It has to be the public, the private, the academia, all the stakeholders have to come together in making sure we do capacity building of the teacher. Teacher is the critical for us. And therefore, the teachers have to definitely get into an incentivized mode of working. They have to be, performance management has to come to these teachers. I can't do that in several education institutions I run. I happen to be the chairman of the board of 3 of the higher education institutions in this country today owned by Government of India. But all of them, I can't change the salaries. But what I can do, I can definitely, from my IRG, which is internal revenue generation, I can give them differentiation in terms of the grants that they give them for research. So I think it's building of infrastructure, making sure that the teachers' capacity is done, and then the collaboration with the industry improves are the 3 things that I believe will make a differentiation as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. We are absolutely out of time, but I am not going to let go this opportunity of asking comments and views from the Secretary of Education. I did talk about AI, Gen I, the technology piece. How do you see this impacting the education both in schools and at the higher level as well?
Very briefly, digital technology and social media has become a part of our lives. And to a very large extent, depending on whom you talk, it is affecting us either very adversely or it is helping us. The fact is that we are going to use digital device as a way to access pedagogy is a fact with us. But how much usage should be there, that is a question which most of us are grappling with. We don't quite know how it is going to impact us in the long run. The way we consume knowledge to a certain extent is being affected by it. If you see Australia has banned social media up till a certain class. In Norway, they have brought in reading as a matter of curriculum. So you must read. And research shows that children who read at least 100-page long story or literature, they are cognitively better than the ones who do not read. Now over this, now we have artificial intelligence. Whether we like it or not, it is going to live with us. So we need to come to terms with it, and we need to leverage on artificial intelligence. We are planning to bring in artificial intelligence as a curriculum in our schools and definitely in the higher education. If you recall, last year in the budget, the Honorable Finance Minister had announced creation of 3 centers for excellence on using artificial intelligence for health, which is being done by IIT Delhi and AIMS. Then on agriculture is being done by IIT Ropar, and on urban development is being done by IIT Kanpur. This year, when the budget was announced, it was particularly felt that artificial intelligence should be used for pedagogical value. So a center for excellence on education is being set up by the Department of Higher Education. We who are part of the school education, we are primarily the consumers. So we are working with them and telling them the kind of AI tools which we would require to do things better in our schools. We're also working with the Vadvani Foundation, and there are just 2 examples I would give before I sum up. One is we've come out with an AI tool for our teachers, which will help them create a course if they're going to teach a particular course. Also generate the kind of questions and help them in assessment, assuming that the class is at 3 different levels. And the second one is counseling is becoming extremely important. You are in class 9, 10th, 11th, 12th. You really want to know what you want to do after you pass out of school. So it is going to map your instinct and your innate ability, and also advise you as to what kind of job or skilling you should be looking for. But then the large question is, AI is going to live with us. We need to get comfortable with it and also see how we can leverage AI in our growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is indeed very unfair for each of the panelists to have responded in a very short time frame. And I know there were a few hands going up to ask questions. We are absolutely out of time. On my left is Amita Sarkar. Raise your hand. She will just give you her email ID. Please send your questions and I will make sure every question is answered by the fellow panelists. That is my job. I will get it done. I'm sorry we can't get into a question answer session. And I would like to thank each one of you for taking out time from your busy schedule. You'll agree that this was something which was absolutely phenomenal what you heard under one roof from different educators, both school and higher education. So a big hand to the fellow panelists and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for a very interesting session. Would you all please step forward for a photograph, a group photograph? I would like to request Mr. Mittal to please give a token of our appreciation to our panelists. I'd like to call upon Ms. Amita Sarkar, Deputy Director General CII, to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Mittal on behalf of CII. Thank you everyone for this session. We will now soon start the next session.